Welcome to another video walkthrough for a vulnerable machine from HackTheBox. So today we're gonna do Optimum, which is, I guess this is the first Windows machine that I'm doing a walkthrough for, so it might be interesting. As you can see, the machine is kind of easy, but the attack vector is unique, so it is gonna be interesting. I hope you enjoy it. So let's get right into it. First, we're gonna start with the basic enumeration. So nmap minus sv 10 10 10 8. Okay, and this should be done quickly. And once this is done, we're gonna start with a more thorough nmap scan on all ports and the level T5 of aggressiveness. So that type of scan is kind of noisy. So we see this one has finished, and we have the 80 web server, or in this case HTTP file server port open. So now let's do the nmap minus sv minus p on all ports minus t5 and the IP address of the target. And in this case, this wouldn't reveal anything additional to this simple scan that we've done. So let's navigate to the web address of this target to see what it is about. So 10 10 10 8. Okay. So we have a HTTP file server version 2.3. Once I saw this, my first the first thing that I wanted to do was to actually look for it. So I didn't want to try to do anything here in the first place. The first thing that I want to do is to look out or to look up if there is any exploit for this kind of thing, if this HTTP file server really exists, or if it's just I don't know, particular to this machine. So what I did is to look for HTTP file server exploit, and as you have seen there, there is HTTP file server 2.3, all versions, remote code execution. And there was also a Metasploit version. If we say Metasploit, so we could just, in this case, run an MSF console and search for the exact exploit and see if it works for our target. I guess this was it. I'm not really sure if this was the one that I looked or that I tried, or the first one. Let's see if... I guess this is the one that I tried. The one. Anyhow, as the Metasploit console boots up, we'll just look for it. And so instead of enumerating further, I just hopped onto this vector of attack for HTTP file server. So I guess there are many ways to do it. Let's say search for HFS, which is the abbreviation for this thing. So the conventional route would be to do a derb to enumerate potential web folders that could be viewed or could hide some interesting information. So we would derb on HTTP 10 10 10 8 with I would start with user share word lists derb big.txt. So I could start with this one, but I don't think it's gonna reveal anything interesting. So normally you would do this type of thing, so you would keep on enumerating as much as possible, because there's never too much information that you can have on your target. So keep on enumerating, always enumerate. So but in this case, once I hopped on into this vector and I saw that there might be potential good routes of exploitation, I thought, okay, let's just proceed and see if we can get through, or if it's actually a dead end. And in this case, it wasn't a dead end, as you will be seeing. So we will be using this one, I guess. So use exploit Windows HTTP Regetto HFS exec. Okay, now let's see the options. So if you just a side note, you could and you can do this machine without Metasploit. I guess there is an exploit. I guess this one doesn't use Metasploit, and there are a couple of other exploits that don't use Metasploit. So you'd be looking for getting a reverse shell without Metasploit, and then the escalation part doesn't need Metasploit. But in this video we will be using Metasploit. Anyhow, so we need to set the I guess the R host. So set R host to 10.10.10.8, and I'm not really sure if we need to set anything else. I guess, well, by default it uses the x86 or the 32-bit interpreter, and in this case I know upfront that we're dealing with x64, so a 64-bit Windows machine. So I could just say set payload, it's Windows. So autocomplete is slower. Windows x64. It doesn't want to autocomplete. Windows x64. Maybe this is not the one. Interpreter reverse TCP. Let's see if it actually works. I guess it does. So right now I don't think there's anything else that we need to set, because the target URI is the default or the root folder. So it's 10.10.10.8/, and we'll just say run. The following options: localhost. So we'll set our localhost to 10.10.14.48, which is my IP, if I'm not wrong. ifconfig. So 10.10.10.40.48. Let's see if it works like this. Okay, so we have a interpreter shell running. Now, at this point, let's see where we're at. Let's see present working directory. So we are on our desktop, and this is where the user flag is in Windows boxes. So we could just simply, let's say, list. So we have, as you can see here, we have the user.txt, and we can just read it. And in Windows we don't, well, if we are in interpreter, we can simply cat user.txt.txt, and we have our shell. So we have our flag. But if we are into a shell, we cannot use cat, because cat is not a recognized command in Windows, and we'll be using more. So more user.txt.txt. And that's how we read files in the command in Windows. So let's get out of this shell. Let's say yes, and we're back into an interpreter. And at this point you can do a lot of stuff to get a basic idea of what the system is all about. We could try get system, but it doesn't work in this case. So this is kind of an automatic privilege escalation attempt. Also, we have a lot of commands, so this interpreter is actually really it's extremely handy, because it has a lot of options and a lot of commands that you can do to enumerate your machine. But in this case, what I would do first, get a sys info, or a more if we are inside the shell, we could say system info, and this is a more thorough enumeration on what we have on the system. And as we can see here, we have the 64-bit version, so it's okay that we used a 64-bit interpreter session. Okay, now back to interpreter. What I tried doing in the first place was I was on the shell, and I tried looking into the registers to see if there are any like passwords that we can access in the registers. So I guess I'm not really sure if I know the command from the top of my head. So let's say privilege escalation Windows, and I don't know, I guess this is the one or this one. So we would be back inside the shell and look into the registers if there are any plain visible passwords in there. So I would actually recommend looking into this if you're trying to learn as much as possible for privilege escalation under Windows. But the commands that we're interested in here are regarding the registers. So these two. So we're looking for the keyword password in the registers HKey current user and HKey local machine. And so we just Control Shift V. Six matches, but nothing interesting. And for this one, Control C, Control Shift V. For this one, we have 100 something matches or results, but nothing that we can use. So the register that we would be interested in is I think default is in HKey local machine software Windows, I guess is WinLogon and default password, something like that. Anyhow, this vector for privilege escalation wasn't fruitful, so I looked for other ways of enumerating or trying to get exploits in Windows machines. In Linux, you would use linpriv check or Unix privesc check, and also exploit suggester to enumerate further so that you can find ways to escalate your privileges. And in Windows, there is also at least one utility that you can use for this purpose, and that's something called, I guess, Windows exploit suggester. You could also use so let's get back from the shell into the interpreter. You could also use Metasploit. It has a exploit for exploit suggester, if I can say it that way. So exploit suggester Metasploit Windows, and it has this module I guess, multi-recon local exploit suggester. But this didn't give too many results. Let's actually look into it. Let's put this this interpreter session into the background, and let's use post multi-recon local exploit suggester. Let's see what options do we have to set. So we have the session. Let's see the list of sessions minus L, I guess. Yeah, so our session ID is 1, so we have set session to 1, and anything else? No. So let's just run this. But I couldn't get anything interesting out of this exploit suggester. I don't think it gave any results for that matter. But anyhow, let's just leave it running. And there's, I guess, this one that I've used. So you'd have to have clone this repository. So nothing in here. Now let's get back to sessions 1, I guess. Yeah, so we're back into our interpreter. Let's see our present working directory. Okay. Now let's clone this one. So we'll just open up another terminal and say git clone Control-Shift-V. Okay. Now ls-a cd windows ls-a. So we have a Windows exploit suggester, which is a Python file. So we will be using, I guess, Python 2. And we'll just say Windows exploit suggester. Let's see what's in the help. So we have a lot of options here, but we need to specify the system information we have from our target. So because based on the system information and that system information that we looked into, so we have shell system info, and we have this lengthy system info, and based on this system info, which we're going to save to a file, that's how it will suggest exploits for our target. So what are we going to do is to try to dump this this system info into a text file. So we will be leaving the interpreter session, and we'll just say execute -f cmd.exe c system info into system info.txt. Okay. All right. Okay, so we have system info created inside the desktop folder, and now we'll have to actually download it onto our machine. So we'll simply say and it will download it into the Kali folder from which we executed the Metasploit, the MSF console. So we'll just say download system info.txt, and we should have it. I guess we executed the Metasploit session from over here. So we have system info, which we will be, so let's get back to Windows exploit suggester, and we will be copying system info into the same directory with Windows exploit suggester. All right, and now we will be running it. So Python 2 Windows exploit suggester, and I guess we need to update the database first. Let's try and run it like that. not enough arguments. Let's say update. Okay, so we have to specify the database that it will be using, and it will be using the database from today, which is the 20th of May. So this is kind of cool. So we have to specify this database, which is an Excel file. So let's get back to, instead of update, we'll specify database and our file. And we're gonna say system is gonna be systeminfo.txt. Okay, and this should run pretty quickly, I guess. Right, so this is the output. We could simply cat the output, or specify that we need to have the output into a text file, or we could simply just copy this output into a text file. And these are quite a few exploits that we can use for privilege escalation onto our box. But what we will be using, so to save some time, we will be using the one that I know that it works. So I started, I guess, with this first one, and then I looked into this one, Microsoft Windows 8.1. So let's say sysinfo is our system. Let's go into the shell and run systeminfo and see what type of windows we have here. Can't actually see if it says it's a Windows Server like 2012. That's the operating system name, but I'm not really sure if we're dealing with. Anyway, so this one 098, it says Microsoft Windows 8.1 x64, so the 64-bit, it's an integer overflow. So let's see what this is about. I was trying to figure out if we're dealing with Windows 8 or something else. Anyhow, let's look for that exploit. I guess I didn't copy it. So copy link, Control V. So we have this one, and instead of downloading it and compiling it, we have a link to the binary. We have a link to the binary version of it, so we could just like copy the link from here and save it one level higher. So over here, let's say wget. Okay, and right now, if arm interpreter session, so let's quit this shell. If arm interpreter session ran from Optimum, we could simply say upload 4102.exe. Okay, now we'll get inside a shell. So this machine was kind of easy. Right now, all we have to do, and if it works correctly, all we have to do is execute this executable Windows binary. So we can simply say 410. At this point, who am I? I'm Kostas. And if I try to navigate into users administrator, I can't do that. Access is denied. So this running this executable should actually escalate our privileges by exploiting that integer overflow. So we can simply say 41020.exe, and it executes it. And at this point, we should be administrators or administrator. So we got the system, and right now we can cd into C users, the administrator, and read our flag from the desktop. So cd into desktop, and let's see what we have here. So we can more root.txt, and that was it. So this was the Metasploit vector for owning this machine. So Metasploit, it's kind of convenient to use when you can, but in some circumstances, like when you're preparing for OSCP, so if you try to get your OSCP certification, you might not be able to use Metasploit. So in that case, you would be using the other vector, which was to try to get a reverse shell without Metasploit, but by exploiting the same vulnerability in the HFS server. And after that, you would simply be using probably the same exploit that I used here, so 41020, or another exploit from the exploit suggester output, and you would probably get to the same place. Anyhow, this was Optimum in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a lot from it. So if you want to see more cybersecurity related videos, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.